the entire mission. And again, that 23 hours is due to some orbital mechanics so that the Dragon vehicle can chase down the International Space Station, as well as, Gary, you mentioned factoring in a sleep period to make sure that they do get rest for all the operations that they have to do on board Crew Dragon when docking to the space station.
That's right, and it's a big journey ahead of them that they have to actually dock to the station, but the Crew-2 mission really is to transport them to their home where they're going to stay for 6 months. And that's the real trick here, is this is just the beginning of their flight and their journey. That is their mission. The Crew-2 mission really does encompass the full expedition that is on board the International Space Station. Their mission when they're on board is science and technology development, really. There's a lot of payload developers on the ground that find that microgravity is a fantastic place for a number of experiments. You can find out a lot about different, whatever sort of scientific field you're in, you can find out a lot about it as you're understanding more. There's computers on board, high-end computing using commercial off-the-shelf computers on station, making sure that that can work in microgravity. Protein crystals grow more perfect. Turns out that you can make fiber optic cables more perfect by growing it in microgravity. All of this just by doing science in a laboratory that you would have on the ground, but just putting it in the environment of microgravity, really one of a kind. You can't really mimic that on any ground-based facility.
Yeah, that is really cool, Gary. We've got another question here. Who are the amazing astronauts of Crew-2 mission?
Amazing being the operative word, right? They are absolutely incredible people. We have an international crew from 3 different countries. First is NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough. He's flown to the International Space Station once before, actually before that as well, on a shuttle mission to outfit the International Space Station with some of the new, they called their mission the Extreme Home Makeover mission when he did that on shuttle, but he also did a long duration flight. He's got a lot of experience. He's got experience in the Army as well. Then we also have Megan MacArthur, who's got a degree in oceanography. So she's been an explorer in underseas before she was an explorer in space. She took a shuttle flight up to the Hubble Space Telescope and had a mission to help to repair that. Her job was the robotic arm operator. Hopefully she'll get to use the robotic arm on the station side for the very first time, something I think she'll be very familiar and used to, using the shuttle's robotic arm. Then you have Aki Hoshide, who, like Shane Kimbrough, flew on both the shuttle and a long-duration expedition on board the International Space Station. He's got a number of spacewalks and even did a Nemo mission underwater. Nemo was it's in an Aquarius habitat, extreme environment living, just instead of in space, it's under the water. So he's an official aquanaut as well as an astronaut. And then you have Thomas Pesquet, the first European to fly on a Crew-2 Dragon. He has flown to the International Space Station once before on a Soyuz for a long-duration mission. He actually flew with Shane Kimbrough, so he's very used to having him for a long-duration mission. Talking to them before, I know they get along very well. They're both very neat, very tidy people, so you know they're going to operate very well in space. And he's definitely looking forward to his journey and sharing his experiences now for his second long-duration flight. Very, very amazing people, really.
Yeah, incredible. And they talked about it earlier on the broadcast about almost how difficult it is to become an astronaut, because you have to be super duper awesome, pretty much, right?
Super duper awesome and very lucky. Especially, I remember talking to Thomas. It just so happened that he was just at the right place at the right time, right? There's a lot of qualified people all across Europe, all applying for these opportunities. I know the European Space Agency is about to send out a call for more astronaut applications to bring in a new class of European Space Agency astronauts. And Thomas Pesquet, very, very qualified person, commercial airline pilot by training, and just really all around very, very smart person, but just happened to be right place, right time. The most recent class of NASA astronauts in 2017, I believe there was somewhere around 18,000 applications,
wow,
and they selected 12. So,
oh, man. The chances.
Competition is stiff. Competition stiff.
Well, thank you for tuning in. You are watching the live broadcast for the Crew-2 mission. Please stick with us. We are sticking all the way through this coast phase as the crew makes their way to the International Space Station. please keep sending in your questions. Use the hashtag LaunchAmerica and stick with us because there's more to come.
Dragon, SpaceX, com check.
SpaceX Endeavor, I hear you loud and clear. How you doing, Sarah?
Copy that, and doing well. Looking forward to supporting you guys today.
Great hearing your voice, not in the sim. And one quick question. We're looking for sweaters. If you have a location for us, we did look at the map and all that. We tried to search it, but couldn't find it. If you can let us know, that'll be great.
Absolutely. Let me figure out where those are for you. Stand by.
Thank you.
Aki, SpaceX for sweater location.
Good.
You should be able to find them in location 2 in the sleepwear bags.
Location 2 sweetware bag, and we did look at that. Let us take a look again, but we thought we did not find it. And stand by. SpaceX Endeavor for inventory.
Go ahead, Aki.
Yeah, Sarah, we looked at
Dragon, SpaceX, we cut out in the middle. Could you please repeat your last?
Yes, Sarah, we took a look at both bags in location 2, and we only found sleepwears. No sweaters are found.
And copy that. I have one other suggestion from our cargo packers, and that is location on the cargo pallet, C5-2.
Okay, copy. We'll take a look at the C5-2. Thank you. SpaceX endeavor for inventory. No joy on that C25. We took a look at that bag. It looks like everything is crew personnel for station.
And copy that, Augie. These are NASA packed bags, so we're trying to sort through that and get you a better answer. Stand by.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome back to the live broadcast of the Crew-2 mission. We are live as the Crew-2 is on board Crew Dragon, making their way to the International Space Station. And currently, there are some comms with the core here in Hawthorne. It is Sarah Gillis communicating with the crew on board Dragon. They're currently looking for some sweaters.
That's right. There are a number of stowage locations for items that have been packed inside of Dragon. So you saw some of those storage containers during the onboard tour, which hopefully we'll get to see another glimpse inside Dragon as Dragon makes its way around the Earth and passes over ground stations that provide the live feeds coming from Dragon that we're able to see. If you recall from that initial broadcast, Thomas Pesquet pointed out a number of different stowage items that were underneath, positioned underneath the seats, where all 4 Crew-2 astronauts were seated for the launch phase and into orbit. Some of those stowage items include lockers, polar lockers, that provide cold stowage for scientific experiments that can be used on the way uphill or on the way back for return to Earth. In fact, some scientific samples may make their way inside Dragon 2, this Crew-2 Dragon, for when it returns in the fall, later in the fall of this year.
These are just Gillis this morning. And again, they're currently looking for some sweaters for the crew. They checked a couple stowage compartments and did not find the sweaters, so that is what the Corps is working on at the moment.
The astronauts still have a number of hours until their designated pre-sleep period, sleep period, scheduled to come up in just about 4 hours from now. 8 hours throughout the 23 hours that is part of the trajectory for the Crew Dragon to rendezvous with the International Space Station. So they'll have a number of hours from now until they get to that designated sleep spot.
And during that sleep phase, we did have one burn already complete on Dragon, but we do have 4 more coming up, and during that sleep phase there will be a couple burns. There'll be the boost burn as well as the close burn, and then the crew will wake up prior to the last 2 burns, which will be the transfer burn and the co-elliptic burn.
Now, shortly before we get into approach initiation and enter into the approach ellipsoid, teams here that you're seeing in Mission Control Hawthorne will undergo joint operations with the teams over in Mission Control Houston. The flight controllers overseeing the operations of the International Space Station. Both teams will be operating under joint flight rules, monitoring the same procedures, and carefully coordinating the steps for the approach phase that'll get Dragon closer to the International Space Station, eventually getting directly 400 meters below the station, then swinging out in front and pausing for incremental steps until it makes its way to the very forward port of the International Space Station. Some of the items that are in stowage now includes the spacesuits that they wore for their journey uphill and into orbit. Those spacesuits being worn for some of the dynamic phases of flight. Prior to approach initiation, the astronauts will put on their suits once again, or don their suits. Some of the views you're seeing from inside the cabin as of late include the astronauts without their suits. This is not a dynamic phase of flight. Dynamic meaning there's a lot of stress on the vehicle or potential for stress, and which includes the docking period. So as they enter into joint operations, having the suits on will be critical. They likely won't need to perform a leak check until after the approach initiation burn, but they'll at least have the suits on and ready for those joint operations.
Dragon SpaceX for comfort.
Go ahead.
For awareness, we are actively working to resolve a discrepancy on our information on the ground to try and locate your sweaters. I did want to offer, if you guys are feeling cold, feel free to adjust cabin temperature through 4.080 increments warmer.
Okay, copy 4.080. We have the procedure up, so we'll talk about it and let you know when we're going to execute it.
And we copy all.
All right, the interaction you just heard from the core. You see on the left of your screen, that's Sarah Gillis, providing sort of the same roles and functions that the Capcom has in Mission Control Houston, the voice from here in Mission Control Hawthorne up to the Crew-2 astronauts. Still working to resolve finding some sweaters for the crew in terms of comfort. But again, the flight controllers here in Mission Control Hawthorne have the ability to control the temperature, sort of the thermostat, that is the cabin air temperature inside of Crew Dragon Endeavour. The crew just confirmed that they are looking at the procedures right now, looking at some of the options, and will report back down to Mission Control Hawthorne with some of their next steps. Again, they have approximately 4 more hours until they have to enter into a sleep period. And they do have a couple of options to maintain their comfort throughout the flight of Crew Dragon Endeavour to the International Space Station. And as Crew Dragon makes its way around the Earth, it is passing over some ground stations and providing live views. What you're seeing on the right is a live view from inside Endeavour. The crew and Gwyn in positions to look at some of the data. You can see Megan MacArthur in her seat, the pilot seat, that seat specially form-fitted to her, as well as the other seats to the other astronauts of Crew-2. Absolutely incredible, Jesse, to see some of these views. I feel like we're lucky to be seeing them as often as we are.
Right, it looks amazing to get some live views inside of Crew Dragon. And love Gwyn, that Penguin 0G indicator that they have named Gwyn. See him flying throughout Crew Dragon.
All right, in the center of the displays, you can see from this particular camera view, center screen, you can see a map that is the trajectory of the Crew Dragon on its flight to the International Space Station. You saw it in the form of a sine wave as it makes its way around the orbit, an orbit around the Earth. A Earth in the shape of a globe, when turned into a flat map, turns into what looks like sort of a sine wave, even though the orbit really is almost elliptical in shape. On a map, it does look like a sine wave, so they are able to track their position over the Earth as they're flying behind the International Space Station and below it. Right now, several kilometers below it. Now, we'll continue to provide coverage of the Crew Dragon's flight to the International Space Station. continuous coverage on both NASA TV and SpaceX's YouTube channels. Stay with us as we continue our coverage and provide periodic updates here from Mission Control in Hawthorne.
SpaceX Endeavor for inventory.
Go ahead, Aki.
Hey, so just want to let you know, Tomas found the sweaters. It was in a 1.0 CTB labeled Shoes LV Clothing, and it was on pallet C Charlie 5-2, like you said, and it was in that bag.
Copy that. Great news. I'm glad you guys were able to find them. Sorry for the confusion.
No worries. Thanks for the help.
Welcome back to our broadcast for the Crew-2 mission with the Crew-2 astronauts on their way to the International Space Station as we speak. And we did hear some words from the Corps to the crew. They were looking for some sweaters for some time, but they were able to resolve the location of those sweaters, so successfully found the sweaters. That is really great news. Help keep the crew comfortable on board Dragon as they're cruising to the International Space Station.
That's right, and we were able to get some views from the inside of the cabin recently as Dragon makes its way around the Earth and passes over some ground stations. We can get some of those live views from some of the camera feeds inside the Dragon cabin. Now, earlier today, during the flight of Crew Dragon from orbit now to the International Space Station, or to where we are now, the crew aboard Dragon actually did a broadcast for us. They took the cameras from the inside and showed us around some of the items that they have aboard Crew Dragon Endeavour. We're going to bring that video that was recorded earlier during today's broadcast live back to you so you can watch it again. I know it's something that I enjoy watching again over and over. So here's that video from earlier today of Crew-2 inside Dragon Endeavour.
Hello, everyone. Welcome on board Endeavour. We're a couple hours into the flight, making our second lap around the Earth. Right now, we're over kind of eastern and South Africa, so it's really great looking out our windows, and we get to see some pretty cool stuff up here. But we had an incredible launch. Hopefully, you guys got to watch it this morning. Right as the sun was rising, we took off. We chased the sun pretty quickly and caught it up just a few minutes after we took off. That was pretty special to see the sunlight coming in shortly after liftoff. We're going to show you around the vehicle real quick, and hope you guys really enjoy it. And I'll pass it over to our pilot, Megan MacArthur.
Hello, Earth. It's great to be back in space again after a few years for me. The ascent was incredible. The ride was really smooth. We couldn't have asked for anything better. There may have been some hooting and giggling up here while all that was going on. We hope you enjoyed the show as well. I'm kind of relearning. I'm like a baby bird here, relearning how to move around in microgravity. It feels really good, but it feels a little bit weird too. Fortunately, it's a nice small space that I can relearn to move around together. I'm going to hand it over to Thomas, who's going to show you around a little bit of what I'm up here.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas, Mission Special Hub, your tour guide today in the Crew Dragon Endeavour capsule. Thanks for flying with us. Welcome on board. Our commander, Shane Kibro. Welcome your pilot, Megan MacArthur. Also, and next will be Aki Hoshide. So as you see, it's pretty roomy. The ride up was fantastic. This is the hatch behind us. Of space, harsh temperature, bad environment, bad stuff. Inside, very comfy. We feel very well protected. Everything is great. If you get closer, you can get a view out the window, and I'll try to give you that if the cable is long enough. And this is what we get to see. Coming up on Madagascar, but it's cloudy. I don't think you get a good view. But we'll try to get pictures, and I can show you maybe the cargo area down there, because this vehicle is bringing people up to space, but also cargo. And if you follow me, and I'm going to flip and try not to make everybody sick, down there is where we have a little cargo. There's freezers. This is our suits, nicely packed. This is some more cargo. We have our water landing equipment. And this is all nice and tidy. And behind those walls are a lot of other equipment that we need, clothes, food, and etc. So with that, now that you're familiar with the capsule, I'm going to hand you over to Akihiko Hoshide, Aki for short, from JAXA, and he's going to give you some more information.
Hello, Earthlings.
And it looks like we lost that live signal.
As well, one thing, this capsule looks just like our mock-up simulator in Hawthorne, except you can't do this. because we're upside down, and this is actually the hatch that goes to the International Space Station. And once we dock, we're going to open this hatch and get on board and see our friends who are up there right now. Now, we have a fifth crew member, and as you can see, Shin is holding him right now, but he can actually fly. It's a penguin that our boys chose, and his name is Gwyn. Welcome, Gwyn. Went to space.
That was really cool seeing Gwen start flying after we hit 0G. Tomorrow, Aki talked about we're going to dock to the International Space Station. It's going to be around 5 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. Hope you guys can join us for that, but it's going to be great to on that forward port on the space station and join our friends there. Crew-1 is on board along with Expedition 65, a couple Russians, and Mark Vandehei. So we're looking forward to joining that crew and having a big time up there with 11 people on board. Megan, any closing words?
And I think we can just show folks kind of what our environment looks like up here, Shane. These are the displays that we use to monitor the spacecraft systems through all the different phases of flight. So we had displays up, of course, during ascent, and then we'll have some ability to monitor the docking sequence as well. All of the burns that will get us closer to the space station. We'll eventually be able to see different kinds of images of the space station on our screens as we get closer. And then, of course, once we contact the space station, we'll monitor the docking system mechanism using these displays as well. So it's pretty neat to see the touch screens and all the different facilities that they have. We can bring up different systems pages while we're working through the different activities. So those are something neat to see. Rather than the old-timey steam gauges, we have these pretty cool touch screens that we can use.
One thing I'll add before we sign off is Thomas noticed a little while ago after we're getting out of our suits, he looked out the window when he saw our second stage pretty much flying in formation with us just underneath us, and that was very special. So we all rushed to the windows to look at that for a little while. So that was pretty cool. So we're enjoying our first day on orbit. So we got a lot more to go, and we're looking forward to it. Hope you guys enjoyed the little tour of our capsule, and we'll be in a much bigger environment tomorrow once we dock with the International Space Station. Have a great day. Take care. So long from Endeavour.
So cool to see the Crew-2 crew on board Crew Dragon, giving us a tour, showing us around, and seeing this what they see. Thomas Pesquet showing us a view out of the window. Such a cool, awesome broadcast that they gave us earlier this morning, right after liftoff.
That's right. We'll get some of those views as we pass over some of the ground stations while the crew is awake. They're expected to be awake for another, well, I guess less than 4 hours now. Their sleep period is scheduled at 11 Pacific time. So they have a number of hours still that they'll be out and moving about the cabin. We did hear an update that they did find some sweaters, so I know it's maybe a little bit chillier inside the Dragon, but especially during that sleep period, having a nice sweater to keep you warm wherever they're positioned on the inside of Dragon will definitely help for the 8 hours that they're allotted on board the Dragon to get some shut-eye as they make their 23-plus hour journey from orbit to the International Space Station, and we're already a number of hours through that period.
Yeah, I think they have around 19 hours left in their cruising flight to the space station. So they still have quite a bit of time, but as Gary said, they'll get some rest in between that. In a few hours, they'll get to go to sleep.
That's right, and so there's going to be five major burns to get the Crew Dragon through the rendezvous phase up to the approach initiation for Crew Dragon's journey to the International Space Station. Of those 5 burns, 1 has already been executed. There's 4 major burns planned. There may be a couple of extra phasing burns thrown in to make sure you're in the right orientation and on the right trajectory to get the Crew Dragon to the International Space Station. Now, in the meantime, as we provide continuous coverage of Crew Dragon's journey to the International Space Station and provide some of these key milestones on when they're performing the burns and follow the trajectory of Crew Dragon to the International Space Station, we're asking or answering questions from social media using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. So please continue to send those in. We've been seeing some great questions so far, and we're very happy to take some of them as they come in. This first one that we're seeing comes from Joel, who's asking, how will Crew Dragon catch up with the International Space Station?
Well, Crew Dragon does have its own thrusters on board, helping it chase down the space station. The space station is moving at approximately 17,500 miles per hour. So Crew Dragon actually has to go a little bit faster than that, right?
That's right, and it does help that the Crew Dragon is at a lower altitude than the International Space Station, as the space station flying overhead, even though the Dragon is flying slightly not as fast as the International Space Station. Because of its altitude, it is slowly catching up. On top of that, you do have these periodic burns that I was talking about. There'll be thruster firings of the Draco thrusters, as Jesse was mentioning, but they'll add on a little bit of acceleration and change either the apogee or the perigee of the Dragon's flight. There's actually another one called the closed co-elliptic burn that happens 2 major burns from now. That'll help it to go in line with the International Space Station and be essentially co-elliptic with it, mimicking sort of the apogee and perigee of the International Space Station. So all of that sort of helps to incrementally help it to catch up to the International Space Station. All right, this next one comes from Jillian, who's asking how many astronauts can a Crew Dragon hold and how big can a Crew Dragon be?
It's a great question. On Crew-2, you can see that there are 4 astronauts on board, but Crew Dragon was actually designed to hold up to 7 astronauts. There's 4 seats that you see on Crew-2 right now, but where they have cargo stowage today, if we remove that cargo stowage, we could fit 3 more seats in there, so a total of 7 astronauts, and the volume of the Crew Dragon is 328 cubic feet. So it's pretty spacious compared to other spacecraft that we've seen before. For 4 people, as you saw on the tour, they do have a little bit of room to kind of float around in the cabin and have a little bit of their own space. It is small, but it's large enough for them for this cruise over to the International Space Station today. So we've got another question. How does the International Space Station maintain its altitude without any thrusters?
That's a good question. International Space Station actually does have thrusters. They're located on the Russian side of the International Space Station. There's a couple attitude control systems that are on board the station. You do have the thrusters on the Russian segment. You also have gyroscopes. Now, gyroscopes just uses angular momentum. These gyroscopes spinning very rapidly, and it does help for the station to maintain an attitude without necessarily having to have thrusters firing. You also have DSATs that help to sort of dampen the relative motion of the gyroscope in case it starts spinning too fast. The DSATs help to settle things out. In addition to that, visiting vehicles that attach themselves to the International Space Station, primarily the Russian Progress vehicle, have thrusters on it, and those thrusters can help to incrementally boost up the International Space Station's orbit. The space station being 250 miles above the Earth does encounter just a slight amount of atmosphere and a slight amount of drag. That drag will very slowly pull the International Space Station down closer to Earth, so every once in a while you do have to perform these reboosts to get the station back up into orbit. It also helps to make that orbit very predictable and get in a proper orientation so that visiting vehicles can have a nice rendezvous with the International Space Station.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that there were other vehicles pushing the International Space Station back up.
That's right. They did a demonstration on the Northrop Grumman's Cygnus vehicle. The Progress is the one that primarily is used for boosting the station up, but they did do one on a U.S. commercial spacecraft, and it worked. So that demonstration and that capability does exist as well.
Very cool. We do have another question here. What will the speed of the International Space Station be when the Crew-2 approaches to the ISS?
Well, the space station is going steady at 17,500 miles per hour. Now, what's interesting is that while that is traveling that fast, Crew Dragon will essentially be matching the speed of the International Space Station. It's actually pretty astounding when you look at some of the operations from the onboard cameras of the International Space Station, and they're looking at Dragon. It just sort of looks like it's just holding place. It looks like it's very, very steady. But really what's happening is both of them together are flying faster than a speeding bullet, 17,500 miles an hour in space together. But really just... that's what the rendezvous procedures are. They're matching the relative motion of each of the spacecraft and then making slight adjustments so that you can go ahead and move in and dock. But that's what's happening, yes. Yeah,
and it looks pretty cool. So if you stick with us through this whole broadcast and throughout the mission, you will get to see what Gary is talking about when Dragon approaches the space station. It does look pretty cool. It looks like they're just stationary in space, but they're really moving at a very extremely high speed.
That's right. Some of those key operations are going to happen early Saturday morning for us here on the Pacific Coast. So the docking is currently scheduled for about 2:10 a.m. Pacific on Saturday. So stay with us through some of the last hours as Dragon makes its approach. And as Jesse mentioned, you can see the two Dragons flying together. We do have high-definition cameras on board the station, so some of those views are going to be spectacular.
Got another question here. How did the International Space Station get up into space? That's a great question. And we did talk earlier about how the International Space Station is about 1 million pounds. So, Gary, how do you lift up 1 million pounds into space? That sounds very difficult.
Well, you do it one piece at a time, Jesse. You definitely don't take the whole thing, put it on one big rocket and ship it up. As cool as that would be, I would love to see that launch. But you do have to do it one piece at a time. So it all started with Zarya's launch back in 1998. Zarya was a joint effort between Roscosmos, or at the time the Russian Space Agency, and the United States Space Agency, that is NASA. They worked together to outfit a functional cargo block, which is a Russian module with essentially the capabilities to that a space station would need. You got your communication systems, you got some thrust capabilities. They were very minimal at the time, but it was that first element. And then after that, it was just piece by piece. You had a U.S. node, and then you had the Russian service section, and then it just sort of expanded after that to the 1 million pound structure that you have now, the International Space Station. That whole sequence took a little bit more than a decade, and even after the space station itself was officially complete after a decade of construction, there were still some additions that happened incrementally along the way to where we are now, 2021. Some of the recent expansions being a commercial airlock, as well as an expandable technology demonstration called the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, BEAM. That's on board as well. And, of course, there's been just other additions, too. You have outdoor platforms, the Bartolomeo platform on the internet, on the European side of the International Space Station. It's a modular space station, so you do have the ability to continue to grow and add and change throughout time.
Almost like large Legos.
Yeah.
And we did get some live view of inside of Crew Dragon. We will get some intermittent live views as Dragon passes over ground segments. So we'll try and show you guys that as often as we possibly can. Got another question from social. How many times can you reuse the Falcon-9 rocket? That is an extremely great question. So Falcon-9 has been designed currently to refly at least 10 times or more. We've currently flown up to 9 times with one single vehicle, which is really cool. It's one of the most amazing things that we've seen in the past few years, because now with reuse, we can make flight a lot cheaper, more affordable, and fly more often, which is the even cooler portion of it. And today, on this morning on our Crew-2 launch, we actually did reuse this booster. It actually flew our Crew-1 crew back in November. So very, very cool that we were able to reuse a Falcon-9 rocket.
That's right, and that did land successfully, and I hope they have and keep rather that new tradition. Right before Crew-2 launched, the Crew-2 astronauts themselves got to go out to the Falcon-9 rocket and inspect it, and one of the things that they did was some of the soot from on the outside of the rocket, because it is a reused rocket, they were actually able to just draw their names just using their fingertips into some of the soot, so they just did their initials. I really hope that tradition stands for reused rockets in the future.
Right, very, very cool. Got another one here. It's so amazing to watch the astronauts en route to the International Space Station. My students are asking, what is the name of the penguin? Oh my gosh, I love the name of the penguin. If you guys missed it, we had a live broadcast of the Crew-2 crew giving us a tour, and Aki told us that the name of the penguin is
Gwyn. I love it. I think we've watched it a couple of times, and so I'll have to go back and listen more carefully, but I believe it was named by some of the children of the Crew-2 astronauts. They got to pick the penguin, and they got to name the penguin. So that's pretty great. I like Gwyn. It's a pretty good name.
I love it. So we've been watching the Crew-2 from the beginning. Early this morning, we watched them suit up in the suit-up room at the ONC building. We watched them as they ingressed into the Dragon vehicle. We had an on-time liftoff this morning at 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time, with Stage 1 returning back to Earth for its second flight and landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, with a good Dragon separation and nose cone deploy. And in the broadcast earlier, the Crew-2 crew mentioned that they were able to see the Falcon second stage from Crew Dragon. So that's pretty cool.
It's really cool. I do hope they...